Welcome everyone to the, I guess, third try for our live stream. We had some big audio issues in the beginning, but I think we have those solved now. So I'm just going to get started. Today we have Professor Jensen. She has simply turned into the finest played bassoon recital I've ever heard, said the American Record Guide about Kristin Wolfe Jensen's CD Shadings. Miss Jensen is professor of bassoon at the University of Texas at Austin Butler School of Music and is also in the faculty at the International Festival Institute at Round Top, professional bassoonist with the River Oaks Chamber Orchestra, founding director of the Meg Quigley Vivaldi competition, and creator of musicandthebassoon.org. In addition to Shadings, she has a number of other critically acclaimed solo and chamber music recordings, many of which are now available on her YouTube channel, as is her tutorial series, The Hertzberg-Kamen Reed Making Method. She has given guest recitals and masterclasses at many major American music schools, as well as in South America and Europe, and her former University of Texas students hold major orchestral and university faculty positions. So welcome, Professor Jensen. Super great to have you here. I really appreciate being patient with kind of the audio stuff issues I was dealing with. So yeah, again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so if there's nothing else, we will just get started right away with our little masterclass. So today we have Oleksandr playing from us. He is going to be a junior at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. He will be playing Vivaldi's F major concerto 485 and Bolero if there is time. Again, sorry for the delay, everybody. But yeah, so I will play everyone his recording. Great, so that is the recording, and we will just get started with a little masterclass portion. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Olex, for sending such a fine recording. Really solid bassoon skills, very solid music making. So let's dig in phrase by phrase, and I think Teddy is going to screen share the bassoon part. So Vivaldi, this is such a great piece, right? There's so many characters. Vivaldi's he was an opera composer. I guess he wrote like 100 operas. So if we can come to this music like singers, and what different characters are we looking for in each section, and sometimes even within a phrase, then we can really bring it to life. So Olex, what are you looking for in this opening phrase?
Um, a solid statement of just forte, not too loud, not too soft, come in with confidence, and the fermata being a, like the closing of an overture, basically.
Mm-hmm. Right. Excellent. Yeah, so it's very jubilant, confident, as you said here at the opening. Um, and Vivaldi writes very precise rhythms, but I think it's performance practice when he has all these 30-second notes and that sort of thing. It's the effect of the flourish more than being really metronomic with the rhythm. And I thought you did that really nicely in measure 19 and 20, of letting that have a nice lilt to it rather than worrying so much about the precision. So, and then the fermata at the end of this opening phrase in 21 is kind of yeah, the end of the overture. You could even do a little cadenza there if you wanted. Have you experimented with that?
I've listened to Azzolini's recording, but never really tried it. No.
Okay, you got to experiment. Vivaldi's all about experimenting, trying new things every single bar in terms of how are you going to articulate, how are you going to use dynamics, and inflection, and if the whole orchestra is stopping right there, why not do a little improv or pretend it's improv? You can plan it. I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to play this opening phrase for us live and make something up. And you have permission to just sound really weird on that fermata, but we want to hear a little mini cadenza.
Okay.
Woo, that was fabulous. So tell us what went into whether you had a thought process or just kind of let it come out. What did you do to make a mini cadenza?
Well, so we ended on a C major chord, so I riffed off of that, and then the next measure, it's an F major, so I decided to do music theory stuff inside my head, and just one chord, 5/7, and riff off of that. A couple of arpeggios.
Your music theory teachers would be proud. That's awesome. School kids, this is why we study music theory and do ear training, because it's all in there now, and being put on the spot, you could just pull that out. Really fabulous. Nice. And I enjoyed how you have a very even tone on all these fast notes. That's something I don't always hear when I'm coaching a piece like this, is some notes might stick out more than others, or the crescendo doesn't lead because the top notes aren't supported. So you're doing that really well. So in this next section, starting in measure 22, what are you going to do with this?
I mean, there are many recordings that I've heard with just piano the whole measure and then forte the entire measure. I personally like short, so kind of like a wave for each phrase, each two-part phrase.
Okay. I appreciate that. And what's the orchestra doing in the first measure of this figure and then versus the second measure?
They're just, let's see. So the first measure is just the first two violins and a viola, da, 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 and then the bass comes in with the low B flat in the second measure, and it just goes on.
Yes, good for you for knowing that. So important to know what's behind you in these concerti. Um, yeah, so we have higher voices in the first bar and then kind of this growly low voice in the second bar. So your articulation choices can serve that change in character. Um, so yes, short in the first bar of this. Are you thinking dynamically any difference between the two bars?
I mean, that's what Vivaldi wrote. Yeah, just a crescendo throughout the first bar, and then a confident forte for the first two beats, and then a decrescendo.
Okay, great. So in your recording, I thought the articulation in measure 22, the first measure of the triplets, um, was a little typewriter-like, a little too serious. So we've got this lightness in the violins above us, and in Vivaldi, part of the fun aspect of playing it is that when you're articulating a note, there are so many options about how you articulate it. There's how much front and ping there is at the beginning of the note, how much sustain in the middle of the note, whether it's short, long, or somewhere in between, and how much taper. So even these staccato notes, there's a million ways to play them. So let's experiment with some of those ways to make them a little cuter, maybe. Cute might be fun. So they're not quite as dry, and there's a playfulness to how you contour each triplet and the whole bar. Try that.
Okay.
Yes, this was so much more charming, I thought, than the first time. That's great. Keep going. So as you go on through this sequence, do you intend to make the first bar of the two bar sections always that kind of playful
Yeah.
articulation? Okay.
Yeah.
Because you are allowed, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the harmony just keeps rising, so I mean, it would be natural to rise with that a little bit, articulation and volume, kind of. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you're allowed to evolve this as you go through.
yeah.
Nice. And when you got to A major, you added a little more length. It got a little more elegant. Really nice. So each harmony kind of had its own personality. That's really great playing. And kind of, that's a big part of what we want to look for in Vivaldi. Whether you've had the theory classes or not, younger kids, you can still kind of feel some of the harmonies being more stable and others a little more suspenseful and uplifting or forward moving. So let's move on to the next phrase. Nice. Okay. When did you make that recording?
2 days ago.
Okay, you've improved since then. Yay. Because what you did better, I thought, just now, more artistically, was the 16th notes in measure 29 and in measure 31. I thought in the recording, they were a little typewriter-like. You guys are too young to know the old-fashioned mechanical typewriters, but you had to really press hard. And it was coming out a little bit, which isn't so musical. And I thought you did it so much more elegantly this time, both in the articulation quality, and that's the beginning of the note, as well as the end of the note, as well as how you contoured within the bar. So there was a gesture here. So, yay! I'm happy you improved. Or maybe it was just spontaneity that happened to come out a little more elegantly this time. Either way, we're happy. Cool. Keep going. Measure 32.
Okay.
Yeah, 32.
Ah.
Nice. And at the end of this whole section, in 36 and 7, you did get a little more articulate and typewriter-like, but I think that's really appropriate here because it's exciting and it's really rugged.
Yeah.
Strings are digging in too. So that was a great use of that harsher quality to the articulation. With Zoom, it's a little hard to tell your rhythm at this very moment, but on the recording, I felt in measure 36, your tie on the D was a little bit gypped.
Yeah.
So tell me some ways to practice this that will ensure more solid rhythm in measure 35 and 36.
You could just eliminate the slur, for example.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much a necessary way to practice when you have a tie like this, especially one with then followed by a dotted rhythm. You got to figure out how you're subdividing that dotted rhythm.
Yeah.
So much going on here. And, you know, I think as I mentioned in the opening phrase, performance practice in Vivaldi, you can have some freedom with, you know, maybe the 30 seconds can be a little late. Dum, da, da, dum, da. That's fine, but the whole thing can't be compressed. You got to arrive on the next beat, which is kind of what happened in your recording.
Okay.
So yes, very important to, in your practicing, break the ties, tonguing, as you just did, and and subdivide little notes within dotted notes. So let's do that one more time. Measure 35. And I would like you to go ahead and break the ties and subdivide.
Okay.
But phrase it so beautifully as if this is the performance. Yeah. Woo. Okay. So measure 44. We've had a little ritornello in between. Here we are at a very different kind of section. What character mood are you looking for?
Well, the movement is in F major, and this section specifically is in A minor. So, I mean, minor. Yeah, it's sad. It's still got that confident tone, but it's toned down a little bit. It has a different mood to it.
Right, yeah. And there's, within the A minor, all this kind of spooky chromaticism, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can play with the articulation qualities within this passage a bit. Still tongue those chromatic notes, but a little, there's a little kind of sting and nudge inside them and a little more length. So have some fun switching up the articulation here.
Ah.
Okay, let's go right to the second bar of this measure 45.
Okay.
And you can do it under tempo. Let's just do it like 3 or 4 different ways in terms of note lengths and how much emphasis you put on those chromatic notes on the beat. Just mess around with it. We're going to all kind of observe your practicing.
Something like that. I'm thinking of just emphasizing beats 2 and 4, even though beat 3 is still chromatic. But I think there's something about 2 and 4 that makes it even more dramatic.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. And maybe you don't want to get too heavy by putting the same emphasis on every single beat.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's important for everyone observing to take away here is that a really important factor of any practice session is experimentation. And never playing something the same way twice. I walk by practice rooms way too often and hear people repeating, you know, sometimes one beat, sometimes two beats, doesn't matter, but just repeating it kind of mindlessly, like a gerbil on one of those wheels. And the mindless part is a big mistake because you're just wasting time at that point. Your brain is turning off and saying, this is boring. What's for dinner? So for your conscious investment in the practicing that you're doing, as well as your subconscious, the actual learning that's going on, you want to switch things up every single time you play it. And don't get mindless with that either. You want to make sure every time you play something, you're thinking, okay, how did that go? What did I like about that? What is still different than what I want? What am I going to change this time?
Yeah.
And that's in general. That's a practice strategy if you're trying to get something exactly the way you hear it in your head. Vivaldi, there's so many options of articulation and phrasing. So the experimentation goes to a new level because you're also figuring out, well, how do I want to play this? What speaks to me, the artist, to make this really interesting and to try different characters every single time. So did you, in this little practice session of 20 seconds that we gave you, figure anything out in terms of what you might want to use?
I mean, just more of a lilting quality. I'm thinking the word lacrimosa. I don't know. I listened to the Requiem, Mozart's Requiem, like yesterday. And so,
Beautiful.
oh, there's something like that in that chromatic.
Cool. Yeah, so maybe the first bar at 44 can trick us into thinking it's going to be boisterous and fun, and then you get a little lacrimosa in the second bar, a little sadder. So really heighten those character changes. Okay. Go for it. Okay, cool. That had lots of character changes. Keep experimenting. Who knows what you'll come up with tomorrow. Great. So moving on. In 47, this sequence, very much a matter of Vivaldi's often used device of two voices within one voice, right? So you can pretend you're the violins on the first couple beats and then the basses on the second couple beats. And really change character, articulation, dynamic, do something drastically different in those two voices here.
Oh, hold on.
Yay! Great character change. And I thought you brought out more of those differences than you did in your recording, so more improvement. Excellent. And then what's coming up? What are you going to do with the next?
It's just a sequence now. And then there are so many ways to play this that I haven't really settled on one way. You could do or there's I haven't experimented with this section enough to figure out what I want here.
Yeah. Well, just like I said with the last section, experimenting is paramount to the success of what's going to eventually become your interpretation, which hopefully, even in performance, has an element of spontaneity to it. So, to really drive home the point of how important any practicing, but especially Vivaldi because of all the choices we have, how important it is to experiment. I would like you to play these two bars, 51 and 52, 4 times, drastically different each time.
Okay.
So take 5 seconds between to decide what you're going to change, whether it's dynamics, articulation, phrasing forward and back, whatever. Okay, and once again, you were able to just spontaneously come up with 4 different ways, all of them viable. Did you have a favorite way? You're muted, Alex. Can you talk to us and tell us which way was your favorite?
Um, a way that I was liking the most is da 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 da. So long, 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 short, 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 long, 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 short, short, short.
Okay, I forget. Was that the first or the second way you did it? Maybe.
I don't remember.
Yeah, doesn't matter. And if we were in like a studio class, or if I knew how to do polling on this, we would take a poll of which one of the 4 ways other people liked best. Which, is interesting to know, but really you have to be the one who's convinced of it. Which is something to keep in mind, I think, as you practice anything, students out there. But again, particularly Baroque music, it's up to you to be the artist and bring some personality to this. Don't go into your lesson thinking, okay, now my teacher's going to tell me how to play this. Go in with, this is my interpretation. Then we can tweak it. So I don't care how old you are, if you're 6th grade and just beginning bassoon, you got to figure stuff out as you're practicing of how you want to sound. And I know you're doing this, Olex. I'm just preaching to everybody out there. Cool. Let's keep going. Fancy part, 53.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So a couple things to talk about here. In your recording and just now, some of your last notes lose their steam before they're over. So like this last C I thought was a little flat and unenergetic. Can you keep the air driving past the end of the note so that we're feeling the energy all the way into the next bar, even though you're resting on beat 4? Just do the last bar. Yeah, this is so picky, but can you keep the volume of the C up for 3/4 of its value instead of its value?
All right.
I think that's more virtuosic sounding.
Okay.
Do you get that difference?
Yeah, I did. For some reason, I liked tapering off because it's a resolution, and apparently resolutions are always quieter. But
Yeah, it could go either way. You're right. It's just with the 30-second notes in the penultimate measure, aren't I great? Ending, I think. But I try really hard as a teacher not to tell people how to play things. I don't think that's my job, especially in Mozart and especially in Baroque music, because the choice has to be yours as the artist to decide. So since you said that, go ahead and make a nice delicate resolution and see how that feels. Back up to measure 56. Okay, you're still kind of going for it, I think. Sounds very triumphant
Yeah.
at the end. So that's cool. And you're supporting the C all the way to the end. So that's improved. So measure 55 on all these repeated C's. Couple things. The orchestra, I think, just sits on a half note. Am I right? For the first two
Yeah.
beats of that bar, or maybe just a quarter note and then rest. So this is one of those spots in Vivaldi where rubato is somewhat implied because the orchestra is not chugging along. So rather than which is, you're growing on those C's, that's great. But maybe a little suspense in the timing of it and maybe some change of the articulation quality would be more interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Could be really fun.
Okay.
Yeah, already. That's more artistic, I think, than what you were doing before. And that's one of 3 million gazillion ways you could play those notes. So keep experimenting. So in your recording, you chose to, in the second beat of all 30-second notes, you chose to tongue those.
Yeah.
Double tonguing, I think.
Yeah.
Right? And today you decided to slur. Tell us about your thought process on that choice.
I wasn't completely confident in my double tongue today.
Okay.
That's really it.
Good for you. I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like. And, double tonguing on low G and A on some reeds just is not real reliable. So you made the right choice. Because you're given a choice here, make sure it sounds good. First and foremost. I respect that. Great. Why don't we go on?
Okay.
Okay, great low C. Oh, wonderful leaping there. So here's where I, as a teacher, I just said that I don't like to tell people how to play things, and yet I can't help but have my own taste. So I'm wondering whether it's my own taste or whether your articulation in 67, 68 was just a little too harsh for the character that I think Vivaldi is going for here. How else might you approach the articulation?
Just oligarch. Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's more elegant for the kind of unstable harmony that's going on here. And when in doubt for some phrasing focal points, I always like to aim towards downbeats. So I think you could do a little more hug on the downbeats.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that gives us a little more anchoring points within the phrase, and I'm digging the more legato.
Yeah.
Articulation there, and then be careful. Trills are so alluring to play really loud and really fancy, but if there were not a trill on that penultimate note, I guess it's an appoggiatura, but go ahead and play this last measure without the trill. Right, so you want to make sure you have that same inflection and same relationship between the strong F and the resolution on the E. And don't go beyond that because there's a trill on it. So go ahead and add the trill back in. Yeah, and lead toward the appoggiatura, the F. Yeah, and again, this is really picky, and we're talking a microsecond here, but because the F that is trilled is an appoggiatura, can you hold it a little longer before you trill? Yeah, I know it wasn't exactly how you wanted it to come out, but the appoggiatura gesture was more impactful there. Will you do it again?
Yeah.
Right, that stress and release happens all over music of all eras, but certainly Vivaldi and Mozart. So you want to really plan the difference between the stress note and the released note. How big of a difference do you want? And this I thought was more emotional. It's more, yeah, more like a sigh. So don't make it all about the trill. I think the appoggiatura aspect of that note is more important. Cool. Keep going. Oh, and then, yeah, in 71,
Yeah.
we had some eighth notes in this sequence. Some of the, play it again, and then we'll work.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I enjoyed this better than your previous time in the recording.
Okay.
And what I heard differently was a lightness to the ends of the notes of the eighth, which helped them be cohesive and relate to each other.
Okay.
And it seemed lighter. So we're in a major key now. It seemed almost angry before when you were really stabbing those notes.
Yeah.
So keep the lightness here. I think it's more fun. And then there's still this relationship of bum strong weak.
Yeah.
Bum strong weak, which I thought you brought out better this time. So I'd like you to do that again.
Okay.
One more thing to be aware of. I don't know what edition you have, or if Vivaldi wrote the forte with the pickup into measure 71, but in general, you don't want pickup notes to be louder than the downbeat that they present. And I was kind of hearing that a little bit.
Okay.
Make sure the C, dum, ta da 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 dum, da, strong weak.
Okay.
Yes, all those relationships seem much more classical and in their orderly place. Light upbeats and moving toward downbeats.
Okay.
Nice.
Keep going?
Yeah. Okay, so here we are with stress and release. That's all this phrase is about, right? So I would really milk that for everything it has. Come to, really sobbing on the quarter notes, and then big release on the eighth notes.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's so much more expressive. And then you could decide, is there an upper voice and a lower voice, and is the upper voice going to be a little stronger and dynamic than lower voice,
Okay.
and come back?
Yeah.
So I'm going to have you think about that and maybe play it. And
Yeah.
then here we are in measure 76 with a trill on the appoggiatura again. We already talked about that concept back on the F,
Yeah.
bars back. So don't make it all about the trill. Make it about the the strong, weak gesture. Yes, that's so beautiful. I find that much more elegant, and you're really bringing out the emotional quality of the stress and release.
Okay.
Lovely. Keep going. Okay, there's so many words and phrases, I'm thinking verbally now, in these measures of 77, 78. And you're kind of playing them like a run-on sentence. So what could you do? So one aspect of Baroque music in general that I think we 21st century people lose sight of sometimes is that a lot of the gestures and how we think they performed back then were smaller motives, and sometimes in sequences, but these little motives within a bigger phrase. And it doesn't mean to not look for the big phrase and to chop things up, but to make sure there is a delineation of one idea and then a compartmentalized next idea. So I think what I'm hearing here is a little too much. I'm going to do one long phrase as if this were Brahms, instead of I'm going to adopt the Baroque sensibility of ya ta 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 ta, ti 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 ta 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 ta.
Yeah.
So will you play it once the way I sang it? So just
Yeah.
put a lot of space between the mini motives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though you're going to stay in rhythm, if you can convey those as separate ideas in how you inflect, that would be really. Okay, yes. More interesting and more Baroque sounding, I think. So, and then we've got, make sure you're getting excited about downbeats. They're exciting in these fast movements, I think. Yeah, yeah, pa, 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 ya, ta, 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 and beat 3 as well. Pa, 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 ya, ta, 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 ta. So hug those a little bit. The D, C, B flat, A. We want to hear that scale coming out.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Now we're getting that inner structure of the
Okay.
beginning scale and what notes are leading within it. Nice. Cool. And then we're going to need that same kind of playfulness and change of articulation quality in 80 and 81. When that
Okay.
So take it back at pick up 77.
Yeah.
Bring it to the end. Okay, fun. And your trills on the recording were exquisite, this ending section. I loved it. So you're getting a little typewriter-like in the low notes in 80.
Yeah.
Can you make those a little more elegant? So, maybe this is partly a fear of response thing. We all have experienced low notes that didn't come out when we wanted them to. But so maybe for stylistic reasons as well as technical security, you can lengthen the notes here and use a little less surface area of your tongue. It sounds like you're pounding a mass, huge mass of your tongue against the reed. So just keep it to one taste bud and keep it elegant. Yes, much more reliable. It all came out nice and elegantly. Um, what if you got a little playful at the beginning of it, maybe a little longer in the low
Yeah.
range? So you're mixing it up. Keep it interesting. Right on that measure, 80? Ah, so nice. It really spices it up. We gave a nice little hug on the downbeat, so we felt the metric structure here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Um, do you have any questions for me about this and
Um,
other people?
no, not really. Thank you so much for
Sure.
this masterclass. I had fun here.
Me too. Love talking about music. We're lucky people, right?
Yeah.
Play music, talk about it, think about how to make it even more beautiful and exciting. Gosh, what a privilege. Okay, so I'd love to take some other questions. My double birthday party does start in 3 minutes at a neighbor's house, but I can be a little late. So, are there any questions from the audience, Teddy?
Yeah, we have a couple. I'm going to do this. So yeah, we can do. We'll take a couple questions. So, the first one I got is from Anonymous, and they asked, "What's on your music stand right now? How do you keep motivated playing bassoon during the pandemic? And what's your best advice for graduating students trying to find an orchestra job right after school?" It's kind of a lot, but
Oof.
feel free to choose, pick and choose parts to answer.
Okay, on my music stand, let me go grab the stuff and I'll
Mhm.
show you. Be right back. Where to begin? Okay. I bought recently a bunch of new solo pieces, bassoon alone, because I probably won't be collaborating with anyone anytime soon. Sad, but I think we're all kind of in that boat. Here are some of them. Osvaldo Lacerda, I believe he's Brazilian. So I'm also on a mission to play more composers who have been marginalized and not celebrated. So Latin American composers are on my music stand. African American composers are on my music stand. I have the Adolphus Hale Stork bassoon set. He's an African American composer. Um, if anybody saw the International Double Reed Society symposium last week, Midori Sampson gave a session and she had commissioned 7 composers in Africa. And so I bought all those pieces. And here's one of them. So go to Midori's website because I think of the 7 pieces, 5 of them are bassoon alone, no accompaniment. So perfect for this time in our lives. Adrian Albert, Bossa Nova, bassoon alone. It's
Ooh.
got kind of a bossa nova beat and very accessible, playable. I'm sure audiences will love it. Very appealing. New to me, Sonata by Barbara York. It does have a piano part, but playing through this, it seems very tonal, agreeable. I believe she still is alive. Um, but it reminds me a little bit of maybe the Hurlstone Sonata, very appealing. Um, Frozen Landscape by Jamie Lee Sampson. Also bassoon alone. She's got a few multiphonics in there, but it's really an evocative piece. Bassoon alone, I said, yes. Creates an amazing landscape of just kind of a barren Antarctica or something. So that's on my music stand. Milday studies in all keys. It's always on my music stand, still over there. Yeah, thank you for asking. What was the other question?
The other part of it was, um, how do you keep motivated during this pandemic right now? And do you have any advice for graduates finding an orchestral position right after school?
Okay. Staying motivated. I have kind of, when I saw in March that I was going to have a long time to not perform, I thought, okay, how am I going to pace myself here? Everybody in the world is feeling a little lost because there's their structure, and a lot of the people in their lives they're not seeing on a daily basis. So I decided for my needs at my age, I wanted to stay in some kind of shape on the bassoon, but not burn out for the long haul of however long this pandemic's going to be. So for March, April, May, June, I practiced 15 to 30 minutes a day.
Mm.
I practiced a whole lot more than that when I was 18 to 24, so don't take that too literally, young people. And then I took 3 weeks off. I'm just not going to touch the bassoon. I'm going to give myself a break. And then a week ago, I started practicing again, so that if my orchestra in Houston happens in the middle of September, I want to be in shape for that and have reeds for that. And so, and I'm, just kind of leisurely learning some new solo pieces. So I think we all have to kind of always be gauging daily, how can I be motivated? If I right now wanted to practice 2 hours a day, that would be too much for me to stay motivated. I want to make sure when I'm sitting in the chair practicing that I am alert, committed to doing my best. And if my attention starts to wane, I'm going to step away for now and go do something else. Another way I'm trying to keep motivated on bassoon, but also life in general, is balance. Every morning I'm getting outside and getting some sunshine before it gets too hot here in Texas, and riding my bike around the neighborhood. I hadn't ridden my bike for decades until March of this year, but to me it's been really important to get fresh air and move and get sunshine. So I highly recommend that, or some sort of movement and outdoor energy feeding you.
Yeah.
And graduate school, what was the
They were asking any advice for someone who just recently graduated from school and is looking to get an orchestral job.
Orchestral job. Well, stay motivated, right, and stay productive. We're kind of all in a holding pattern in terms of the orchestra players who have jobs are in a holding pattern. Most of them are not going back in the next few months. So there probably won't be many auditions in the next few months. So I think those of you who are new to the job market, just keep building your artistry. Figure out who you are as a musician and make sure you can bring that personality, your passion for music, to the auditions when they do happen. And again, I think so many of us try to fit inside a box. What's the panel going to be looking for on this audition? I have to play everything in tune and in time, and kind of stifle the artistic side of us. And the fact is, if we can embrace the artistic side of us, the fact that we are each different, and the way I play Czech 4 is going to be different than somebody else. But if I'm committed to it, and I can kind of draw the committee into my artistry, then I've got a shot at that job. So, bring the passion to everything you do. Balance that with all of the non-negotiables, pitch and response and all those things.
Yeah, and our next question, they asked, what have you been doing for exercise and sanity during the pandemic? So I think you already kind of answered that, unless there's anything you would like to add to that.
In addition to my daily bike ride, which I love, I do some yoga with Adrienne videos. She has hundreds of them on YouTube for free. So several times a week, I'll just kind of look through what kind of length of video am I looking for. Sometimes I'll do a 10-minute bedtime yoga, or sometimes I'll do a 50-minute full body strength. So that's really fun. 20 years ago, I got it, maybe 25, got into these exercise videos, DVDs that I still have. with hand weights and cardio interval training. So I just love that stuff. I highly recommend it. Again, you can do 15-minute ones, or you can do 45 minutes or more, and do something that's, if an hour seems like a lot to you, do what's going to be motivating. Just do 10 minutes. It feels great once you're done.
Yeah, thank you. And before we go, I want to talk about Barton Kane. They asked that last question as well. So if you are anyone looking, yes, we have the Barton Kane T-shirt. If you're ever looking for the quality GSP cane, please go to Barton Kane. They have their link down there. I think it's right below our faces. Yeah, so they have a huge variety of GSP cane. I use the Hertzberg shape with Billy Short profile. I know they're coming out with more and more different shapes, profiles, styles, a bunch of different types of cane as well. So if you're ever in the market for GSP, please check them out. Amazing people, amazing cane. And without keeping you any longer, Professor, I will be ending your stream. Stay tuned for next week's artist, and thank you guys all for being here.
Thank you, Teddy.